Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Leadership Conversations with Krishna. And today it's going to be a solo podcast, right? And the format that I'm going to choose is basically a set of pre-prepared questions, which I myself am going to answer, based on what I feel, right? So primarily we're going to cover Prime Minister Modi's visit to Japan, which happened on the last few days of August, and his visit to the SCO summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin, China. Right. So coming to the first question, what are my initial thoughts on these two visits to Japan and China? Firstly, this has been a really busy week for India's diplomacy. Outside of the two official visits to Japan and China, the phone has been ringing in New Delhi, and also when Prime Minister Modi has been traveling. President Zelensky of Ukraine did call the Prime Minister, before the SCO summit to express his views and to seek Prime Minister Modi's help also to convey Ukraine's point of view to Russia. Outside of that, we had the Singapore Prime Minister come to India, on the 3rd and 4th of September. And also the German foreign minister is here in India. And the EU also has been calling Prime Minister Modi to discuss the trade deal and obviously also the Ukraine war situation, right? So very busy week for India's diplomacy. And I think, the visit to China and Japan specifically went really well. The optics were good. And Prime Minister Modi has been a big fan of the Look East policy, right? Even when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, the state did do business with Japan. And Japan is an old trusted partner. Sometimes I do feel that the relationship does not get enough credit. And, you also saw the Japanese kind of really going out and welcoming Prime Minister Modi's visit, right? And it's not just the Indian diaspora in Japan who were welcoming Prime Minister Modi. It was, the Japanese people saying, Modi-san, welcome to Japan. And, the Tokyo sky tree was lit up in Indian colors. So these are not normal gestures. I think the Japanese people really gave a good welcome to Prime Minister Modi. And the SCO summit was a multilateral forum. Obviously, there was more focus on, the bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping, and then the viral photos between Putin, Xi, and Modi. But we'll focus on more of that later. But at the start, I'd like to say it was more a multi. The SCO summit is all about multilateralism, right? Um, Going to the second question, did the Chinese visit happen because of President Trump and his tariffs on India? I don't believe so. Because India and China have been kind of normalizing their relationship in the last few years. Both sides have taken, steps in that direction. And sometimes public memory is short, but it's also important to remember that Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping also met in person and had a bilateral in October 2024 in Kazan in Russia. So I think, and also Dr. Jaishankar and Rajnath Singh also went to China for the SCO Foreign Minister and Defense Minister Summit, respectively. So there have been steps taken in the direction of normalizing ties, right? Also the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra has been resumed. One of China's top diplomats, probably the top diplomat Wang Yi, also visited New Delhi just a few days before Prime Minister Modi's official visit. So I think a lot of steps in the right direction. So I don't think there is a direct relation between tariffs on India and President and Prime Minister Modi's visit to China. Was Ukraine war discussed during the SCO summit? Uh, you know, Obviously, right? The Ukraine war is one of the top global issues of our times currently. And, at the SCO, you had three major players. One, Russia, who's directly part a player in the war, and India and China, who the world, mostly India, I would say, the world kind of trusts it to uh, play its role in diplomacy to end this war. So I think the Ukraine war was definitely discussed, and New Delhi's diplomacy will play a big role in ending this war, is my opinion. Because, it's not just Zelensky who's been dialing and updating Prime Minister Modi. It's also other European leaders, right? Finland's leader, for example, France's leader, for example, and these are people who are dialing Prime Minister Modi after the Alaska summit between President Trump and President Putin, right? So that shows the level of confidence in India that India can help end this war. So I think the Ukraine war was definitely a big topic discussed in the SCO summit. This is a good question. Thoughts on the viral video and photos between Prime Minister Modi, President Xi, and President Putin at the SCO summit? That was great optics, right? And in diplomacy, optics, being seen together, these are very important aspects, right? And when three of the four most powerful countries in the world meet and then exhibit such closeness or bonhomie, it is likely to go viral. And those photos went really viral across the world, right? The whole world saw that three powerful men in the world, President Putin, Prime Minister Modi, and President Xi coming together, right? And even the American media was playing this all over, like in Western media, American media. India is definitely discussed in the American media, but not as much, right? But once these videos went viral, India has been discussed a lot. So sometimes it also shows you that the world respects power and showing off your powerful friends, right? And Prime Minister Modi bonhomie with these two leaders definitely shows power of India and belonging to the big stage. Is India's relationship with Japan underrated? Uh, Definitely. You know, Sometimes, and not just Japan, right? I'm talking about, in general, like some of the Southeast Asian countries and Asian countries. Sometimes we focus a bit too much on, our relationships with US and the Western world, UK, Germany, for example. But we forget that, some of our closest partners are not very far from us. Before I go to Japan, Indonesia, for example, does more trade with India than UK and Germany. I'm sure a lot of you would not know that. Even I didn't know that until recently. And, Singapore, for example, is the highest uh, inflow of, is the highest source of inflow of FDI into India. Singapore also very underrated relationship, right? Also very close people to people ties. Now with Japan, yes, definitely underrated. Japan and India go back a long way. All of you might remember Maruti, for example. I used to live in Gurgaon, and Gurgaon in Haryana has a couple of Maruti plants, and in a way, the modern Gurgaon that we see today, the foundation was laid by the Maruti plant, and that is because of the partnership between Suzuki and Maruti. So essentially, India-Japan partnership, right? So Japan also does a lot of work with India. It's primarily you see it more on the northern side, and also we have a lot of ancient connections, Buddhism. So I think the relationship is not talked about much, but is a really important and one that I can see will definitely grow in the near future. So we covered in general. Now we'll kind of jump more into the specifics, right? India, Japan, and then India, China. What? So the question is, what is the main goal of the India-Japan joint vision for the next decade? So India, Japan kind of laid out a long-term vision when the two leaders met, right? And I'm just kind of reading from my notes. So at a high level, the vision talks about next generation economic partnerships, focus on mobility, right? That means bullet trains and then urban transportation in India, passing on best practices and investment, focusing on ecological legacies, climate, sustainability, things like that. Focus on technology and innovation. There was also India, Japan, AI kind of an understanding that they came together. A lot of focus on people to people. There's going to be two-way exchanges of people, skilled workers and people going from India to Japan. And then also vice versa. It's not just going to be a one-way street. It's also going to be Japanese people coming to India, uh, you know, passing their leadership and skills and also studying in India, right? India has great educational institutions. There's going to be a two-way street. People is going to be a big part of this relationship. Also, government to government, and this is something that really excited me, right? Sometimes like the capitals or the countries can have relationships and do business, like New Delhi and Tokyo, for example. But then India has 25 plus states, and Japan also has a lot of what they call as prefectures, their equivalent of states. Now, these two also have to partner, right? The capitals can sign agreements, can do business, but the states ultimately have to work together. So, what I liked about this particular thing is that there is focus on government to government dealing. That is essentially state prefecture relationships. So, there's going to be more visits from Japanese, prefectures to India, and then India's folks going to Japan, right? This is going to even more build the government to government and ultimately people to people relationship. Um, you know, can you elaborate on the ambition to double Japanese private investment in India to Japanese yen 10 trillion and its impact on the bilateral trade? So, this is very important. And there's also a follow-up question saying, is there a US angle to it? Like I'm sure you would have seen in the news that, uh, Japan and US are also talking about a trade deal. And, there's talk about some amount of dollars being kind of invested from Japan into the US, right? So I think the Japanese, would like stability in policy, stability in leadership. And I think India offers them that. And that is why their commitment to Japanese yen 10 trillion investment, which is going to be, it's not going to be obviously tomorrow. It's going to be a more long-term investment. This will be over a period of time, right? But what any country, forget about Japan, but any country in the world looks at is stability in policy, continuity, so that they can plan for their next few years or decades. That I think Japan sees in India, because of the good relationship with the people and government, and they're willing to commit, that they're willing to double down and commit on this relationship. But at the same time, I think, yes, Japan and US have a, great relationship too, right? And all three countries, India, Japan are also, and US are part of the Quad also, right? But I think currently at the moment, the concern that the world would have with US is just the stability in policy and volatility, right? And sometimes you might see commitments being made on paper, but not necessarily translating on the ground. And I'm not saying that will happen with the Japan and US case, but it's also true that not every commitment made on paper reflects on the ground. So I think, yeah, this long-term investment Japan commits, which is committing to India, I think is primarily because of the policy stability that they see in India. How does partnership support people exchanges such as students and skilled workers, right? And so let me just read out from the MEA statement itself, right? So on more on the people to people partnership. So India Japan will be launching an action plan for the India-Japan Human Resource Exchange and Cooperation that targets an exchange of more than 500,000 personnel in both directions in the next 5 years, including 50,000 skilled personnel and potential talents from India to Japan. Expanding endowed courses and vocational training programs in India and training of Indian personnel in Japan under India Nippon program for applied competency training built on the achievements of the Japan India Institutes for Manufacturing Japanese endowment courses. Uh, there's also going to be strengthening of exchanges of researchers and students to the Sakura Science Exchange Program, the Lotus Program, Hope Meetings, and the Inter-University Exchange Project by MEXT Japan, and supporting educational collaboration through the initiative of EDU Port Japan. Also, there's going to be facilitation of greater bilateral tourist flow, showcasing each other's cultural heritage. One thing, is obviously we all know uh, about Japan is their, and it's kind of world famous, right? Their ethics and hard work and commitment and to manufacturing and all the principles to manufacturing. That is something that will be exchanged between these two countries. Also, if you see something on the ground, right, a good indicator is just check out the number of direct flights between India and Japan now in 2025 as compared to, let's say, 5 to 10 years before. You'll see a slight increase. That means that there is more business to business and people to people connections. Frequency of flights will increase. That is a big indicator on the ground to see how two countries are actually deepening collaboration. Just example like India, UAE, for example, have a great relationship, and that shows in the number of flights you have between these two countries on a daily basis. Literally, major cities in India and UAE are connected almost every few hours, right? So we've covered Japan. Now we'll jump into the Chinese uh, leg of the visit, which will cover both the bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping and the SCO summit, right? So India, uh, the first question on the India-China is, were Trump's tariffs a reason for India to get closer to China? I think, this was already slightly covered before, but no, I don't think so. I think, there's two parts to this visit. One is the multilateral part, where, it's not just India, China, and Russia that came. There are other big countries that, smaller and important countries that were less talked about. Central Asian ones like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and then also Belarus, which is a close partner of Russia. Iran is also part of SCO. So some Mongolia, all of these countries are important in their own way. So all of them kind of coming together. That I don't think the tariffs have anything to do with this visit. Like I said, I think India and China partner at various multilateral forums, right? And this is one of them. And they've been kind of working on the relationship and normalizing it, with visits by Dr. Jaishankar and Rajnath Singh, the Foreign Minister and Defense Minister of India to China before, and Wang Yi of China to India coming before. So I think this is all kind of increasing step by step, right? The normalization is happening slowly and slowly, and that visit um, is more about kind of getting to 100% normalization. So, what was the main strategic guidelines that was discussed between Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping, right? So, uh, broadly, it's about 5 to 6 things, right? While I think the broader focus for India and China is to focus on areas where they agree and kind of increase on those areas, right? You should always uh, increase and further a relationship on places where you agree. There will always be disagreements, and that should not, die down your progress made in other areas, right? Those disagreements will be there. Those will be there between even the best of friends, right? And in geopolitics, it's more about interest than friends. So yeah, talking about what is the 5 to 6 main things that were discussed in this summit between President Xi and Prime Minister Modi. I think it was shared vision for a multipolar world. Both these countries are the only countries that have 1 billion plus population, so they have a big role to play in uh, in the multipolar world, and being the voice of the global South also, right? If you see some of the other people on the UNSC or other Western-led financial institutions, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of importance given to global South, or the global South is not really represented. So India and China have the responsibility to jointly represent the global South, right? And so I think the second thing that was discussed is building trust at the frontiers, meaning building trust at the borders, ties that bring people closer, and this includes resuming flights and resuming visas between countries, and visas between India and China. Also, resumption of the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra, which we saw recently. That is a big pilgrimage for many people in India, and Hindus across the world, people of Indian origin. So that is a big development. Uh, I think fairer trade and deeper investment rights, and fairer trade and deeper investment ties is also one of the priorities. If you see some of the forums like WTO and other organizations across the world, right? Even if you talk about outside of financial institutions, even trade-based institutions, there is again a slightly Western focus. So again, India, China here have a responsibility to bring that focus in the middle and not just represent themselves and their interests, but also of other countries. See, other countries are looking up to India and China respectively to make their case, right? Just imagine that you are a smaller Central Asian or African country, or some even a smaller Middle Eastern country. I don't think you have the opportunity to have one-on-ones with the Western leadership, or even top oncos of all these financial institutions, right? So, but Prime Minister Modi or President Xi have meet these people more frequently, so they can pass on their message, the message of the global South, to these people when they meet them frequently, right? Example is, when was the last time you saw, for example, an American president visit Nepal, for example? So if Nepal has to pass a message to US, it will likely go through either India or China. Most likely, I think India, but just giving you an example, right? Uh, another aspect that was discussed is strategic autonomy and shared responsibility of leading the world. Again, this is kind of whatever I discussed, right? Uh, you know, uh, they have the responsibility to represent their own interests, the 1.1 plus billion people in either country, and also other countries that are looking up to them, right? And yeah, and it's there's another question that has just come in about what are the different multilateral forums that India and China kind of come together. See, it is BRICS, and was initially started as uh, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and later it is now growing. Today it's about 20 plus members. 10, some of them are observer members, some of them are permanent members. Some big other permanent members that are part of BRICS are outside of these five, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. There's also United Arab Emirates. There's also Iran, right? These are all big countries. And observer, you have countries like Vietnam, right? And also then another forum where India and China come together is SCO, the summit that was held in Tianjin recently. SCO stands for Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Here, this is more a Eurasian forum, right? BRICS is kind of more worldwide. You have Brazil also, which is in South America. So you have people from across the world, Africa, South America, Asia, everywhere, right? Of different parts of Asia. Asia itself is huge. But whereas SCO is more Eurasian focused. People slightly compare it to NATO, which is a transatlantic organization. But SEO, I mean, I don't have really much to say on the comparison, right? But SCO is more a Eurasian thing. If you see, all the countries are either in Asia or kind of like hugging the Asia-Europe border, like Belarus or Russia, for example, which is in both. The Turkey is also part of SCO, and Turkey is part of both NATO and SCO, right? And then you have all these other Central Asian countries, like I mentioned before, like Mongolia, Central Asian countries like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Each of these are important in their own right? You know, just because they don't get media coverage doesn't mean they're not important. They could have minerals, they could have rare earths, they could have, strategic uh, locations where, trade routes can pass through, or there could be, shipping lanes, whatever connectivity, right? Each of these countries are important. You cannot ignore any country in the world today. And also it includes, Mongolia, for example, like I said. So I think these are the places where India and China is primary two big places where they're coming together, right? And their focus is not just on deepening partnerships politically and economically, trade, but also, like, financially also. Because some of these IMF and World Bank, although they're global, but they have a slightly Western tilt. And India and China, along with the help of Brazil, Russia, and South Africa, trying to bring them to the center, right? Also, help create, a system where other countries in Africa are also seen and not neglected by by these Western-led financial institutions. So that is a big focus of India and China, I believe, like bringing uh, some neutrality to financial funding and financial institutions. Yeah, so I think so. The last question we have is why is restarting direct flights between India and China seen as important now? I kind of covered this before. Restarting flights between countries and having visa programs that are, friendly to either country are a big indicator of good relationships between countries, right? The more frequency of flights means more people are moving between two locations, and that means the people include business and also normal people for tourism, students, or anybody who lives in either country. So the more people travel, the more they will explore each other, and there will be business outcomes, right? And right now, India and China already do a lot of trade, but it's slightly one-sided. Like China kind of exports more than India does, which can be corrected. It's not that it cannot be. And I think through these direct flights, we can achieve more improvement in business. And I think the focus, like I said, with China, obviously, it's a important relationship. It's not an easy relationship, but the focus should be on areas where we agree and cooperate, and increase and double down on areas where we agree and cooperate. And these are the two big nations in the world, so they need to and will, cooperate. Yeah, so I think that brings an end to our questions. But just in conclusion, I'd like to say that, yeah, what a week of diplomacy, right? I started off by saying that it's not just these visits to India and China, but also the Singapore Prime Minister's visit to India, German Foreign Minister's uh, visit to India, and how the phone's been ringing in New Delhi. That shows that, how important New Delhi has become across the world now. Not just for trade and economics, but also politically, like resolving disputes and being that person that both the East and West equally trust, right? Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode. It was my first solo episode, and I thought I'll give this a try. Yeah, thank you.